Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Manny Apollonio, the host of The Weirdness of Money here on the lovely YouTubes. I have a special guest today. I've been wanting to interview a therapist for a very long time, and I came across Kari Rusnak's article, Perpetual Problems with Money or Finances, through the Gottman blog, and I'll have her explain what that means in a minute. She was totally speaking my language, and I knew I had to interview her. You know, she's a distinguished expert in her field of mental health. She has rich experience that spans over a decade. She graduated with a BA in psychology and an MA in counselor education mental health from the University of Central Florida. She holds multiple licenses as a licensed professional counselor in Mississippi, Colorado, West Virginia, and as a clinical mental health counselor in Utah. Notably, she is a certified Gottman therapist and a board qualified telemental health provider. She has skillfully employs a range of evidence-based practices like cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, and dialectical behavior therapy, tailoring her approach to uniquely fit each client's needs. For couples, she specializes in the Gottman Method of counseling, and I'll have her speak to that in a second here. But you know, she's here, and we're just gonna dive into what I hope is an enlightening discussion about the intersection of mental health and financial wellness. So, Kari, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Manny. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm excited to talk about this, and I love all your YouTube videos.
I love all your blog posts. I just realized you had so many. I came across your article through an email on the Gottman Method's email list, and that's how I came across your article. So I would love to hear about what it means to be a certified Gottman therapist, and how you got connected with them.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful to the Gottman Institute for inviting me to their blog, writing all those posts. Really helps me reach a lot of people I wouldn't normally reach, like you, for example. So I think that's really cool, and I feel honored to write for them. So you kind of mentioned earlier in my introduction, the Gottman Institute, they have an evidence-based practice for couples counseling, the Gottman Method. And they've been doing research, since the 70s on what makes relationships work and how we can make them work better. And they started a training program for therapists along the way for us to learn about these things and use what they found in their research in order to help couples have better relationships, communicate better, have more relationship satisfaction. So being a certified Gottman therapist means that I've done all the levels of training and I went through their certification process. It definitely increases your confidence in doing the work with clients, and it opened a lot of opportunities for me beyond just counseling couples, writing for the blog and other websites and stuff like that.
I first read about the Gottmans when I picked up their book, How to Make Marriage Work or something like
Making
that.
marriage work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
making marriage work when my marriage was not doing so well. But, it got me really interested in them. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting was this. They said that they were able to predict if a couple was going to divorce. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, yeah. So, John Gottman, who's the founder, he actually, interestingly, that you said the reason you found them is the same reason I think everyone finds them at some point. But he actually started the research because he had gotten divorced and he wanted to learn more about like why people end up getting divorced. So in that research, he was looking at, longitudinal studies of couples and, whether they got divorced or stayed together. And he was able to track the behaviors that couples were doing that ended up getting divorced at the end of that study, and then track the behaviors the couples were doing that led them to stay together and have higher rates of relationship satisfaction. So he kind of used those metrics and then could sit with couples. And within, like, I think he said at the first 2 minutes, like within a couple minutes, if they're doing these certain behaviors, which we call the four horsemen of the apocalypse,
Ooh.
then he would predict that they might possibly be divorced depending on how much they used it and how bad it was in the first couple minutes of sitting down with them. So, yeah, I mean, the only good thing about that is that it's reversible. We don't just let you get divorced because we can predict it, right? Now we're like, "Hey, let me teach you a better way to communicate with your partner so we can stay together." And that's kind of where his wife, Julie, came into the mix when they met each other. She's more clinical and she's like, "Oh, let's fix these things, let's really focus on that." And she does beautiful clinical work.
So interesting. I want to dive into like that the intersection of mental health and financial wellness in these next few questions. So, in your extensive experience in mental health, how often have you encountered clients dealing with financial stress, and what impact does that stress typically have on their mental well-being?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I wrote that article you found because it seemed to be a common thing I'm seeing, in the last year with my couples is, and always I've seen it, but much more this year. And I think post pandemic and like, leading up to holidays right now, especially, is kind of added to that. Every couple has conflict over finances at some point. The level just varies. Sometimes it's just a little bit of conflict about a one time overspending or something like that. And other times they come from really different backgrounds of how they value money and how you spend or save money. And then when you join in a long term relationship or move in together or start sharing finances, that becomes much more apparent to be a problem and it causes a lot of conflict. And of course, we know anything in relationships that cause conflict and something especially so stressful as money is going to affect your mental health too. So that there's like a subset of problems with that too. You have relationship conflict, but maybe now you're experiencing higher levels of stress, which could lead to anxiety and depression. And for some people, like obsessing over money can become such a big preoccupation in their mind.
Ooh, okay. Um, so I'm a financial wellness coach, and usually people are coming to me usually with the money questions first. And I come to find that they have stress around their finances, which is part of the motivator, right? To get them in front of me. But I guess for the viewers, when should they be in front of a therapist first or in front of a coach first? Or what's your what have you seen works well?
Yeah, and I think both specialties are important to see when you're talking about money, even if there's not conflict around it, right? It's good to like have an expert kind of guide you with your finances. And then also it's good to have somebody help you navigate the conversation. Now, for sure, like signs that I'm like, oh, you definitely want to go to therapy first. You definitely want to do some therapy to work it out. Well, I think, if there's any addictions around money. So we talk about like a gambling addiction or a shopping addiction. If one partner is overspending due to something like that, that's definitely something I think you need to address first with a mental health professional and maybe even a individual counseling in addition to couples counseling with that. If there's been any financial infidelity, which is a term just for much like infidelity, but it's surrounding finances, when you spend or hide money in a way that your spouse didn't know, and it's a betrayal in the relationship. So if you have like a large amount of debt or you've been loaning out money or you made a big purchase and didn't tell your partner and they find out later, it feels much like traditional infidelity. Definitely if there's just a lot of conflict and you're having a hard time talking about it, like you don't make much headway in your goals because you're just going back and forth and spending hours just arguing and not seeing eye to eye. You definitely need to work on the communication skills before stepping into your office when you're not really there to help them learn how to communicate better. Not, I mean, somewhat, but not so much, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then if there's any like hang-ups, like jealousy of like around maybe your spouse makes more money than you, or
Mm.
you're in a significant amount more student debt than they are, things like that. You want to be able to talk to your partner about those feelings and work on them, or talk to a therapist alone and work on them too. And if you've never shared your income with each other, your income and your debt, you don't want to be doing that for the first time in a financial planner or coach's office because there's going to be surprises and maybe you even feel a little apprehensive about sharing that if you haven't shared it before. I'm going to go ahead and guess there's maybe a reason for that. So those are just some of the ideas I think, if you're experiencing those things, it might be helpful to pop into a therapist's office before making that appointment with a financial planner.
Yeah, that's really no, that's really good advice. It just seems like in general, you kinda have to be in a good place foundationally, mentally to even, like, tackle, like, this higher level goal of achieving financial wellness.
Yes, and I think, finances is such a big thing. It affects every part of our lives, and it's one of the top things that couples fight about. I didn't mention that before, but finances and parenting are two things that most couples will fight about if they have kids. So yeah, you want to be able to have healthy communication with your partner before talking about like a hot button topic. So, and I don't know, I might be jumping ahead on this, but you wanna focus more on, listening to your partner in order to understand where they're coming from instead of listening to just respond to them.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, you're kinda touching on the next part, but, the therapeutic approaches, right, for financial anxiety. So you've been trained in all these different ways to help people. Could you share how your therapeutic approaches like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, can be effective in helping individuals cope with anxiety and stress around finances?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So when we look at the individual, not the couple, just looking at
Right.
individual first. Yeah, if there's a lot of anxiety about it, and I brought up before, like, the backgrounds of how you grew up and how money was spent, or if there was money or not, plays a big role in that. So a lot of times when we see, like, anxiety about finances and spending, it's because there wasn't financial security growing up, and you wanna make sure you're not in that same position as an adult. You wanna pay your rent. You don't wanna end up getting evicted because you couldn't afford something. But CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, can be really helpful when you're having financial anxiety, because you want to be able to kind of tackle those thoughts, feelings, and actions in a way that helps you look at those thoughts in a rational way. So if you're not spending anything and, like, to the point you're almost starving yourself because you don't wanna be homeless, that's not rational for most people, right? We
Mhm,
we can
mhm.
afford to get food or find food in some way, like, it's not okay to skip out on something like that. So
Right.
using a cognitive behavioral approach with that would be helpful, just kind of tackling, like, which parts of these thoughts are rational and how much control you have, like, in the way you approach it just a little bit different to feel less anxiety about those things. And I know you said something else. What did I
No,
miss?
yeah, that's good. So that
Okay.
was on the individual side, and it's harder, I guess, I mean, I don't know, I'm not the therapist, but how do you do it with couples?
So for couples, and that's kind of what my article touched on in the beginning, perpetual problems around finances. So a perpetual problem is a problem that we have in our relationship over and over and over again, and we can't seem to solve it. Like, we just keep having this conflict and, like I was saying before, never making any headway, and you're just feeling stuck. So to treat that is where we're focusing on those active listening skills, those deep listening skills. Listening to respond is not good. We don't hear what our partner says when we do that. So a lot of my time spent with couples around many issues, but especially finances, is focusing on listening to understand. So understanding your partner and how they feel about finances and money, like, what was it like growing up for them? What was it like before you guys got together, if you met, into adulthood, and really understanding from their perspective, not from yours, but from their perspective, what it feels like. It can make it easier to problem solve together when you both feel really understood. So when we're talking about that, we're often diving, like, into much deeper than just like, I don't want to buy this car, it's too much money. It's really about, like, hey, my mom overspent as a kid and my dad had to work 3 jobs to put food on the table, and I don't want to be in a position like that. So I think when you can learn to hear your partner and empathize and validate with where they're coming from, most of the time problem solving becomes much easier. But if not, we'll also tackle those problem solving skills and work on like how to find appropriate compromise where nobody's giving up like their core beliefs, needs, or values in order, to have something you both agree on.
You are validating everything I do already in my practice, but, like, I have the couples kinda think back about, yeah, like, what's your first memory of money? Who taught you money? How did your parents talk about working? All of these great questions, and then, was there scarcity? Was there abundance? And it comes out. It's like, "Oh, it makes sense now why my husband is so eager to reach this whatever, what seems to me an arbitrary financial goal, because he grew up in scarcity, whereas for me, I never had to want for anything, so I always believe that I'll be provided for, So these different, like you said, different, experiences coming together. Of course, there's gonna be some points where they're just not in alignment, but it can be worked on is what I'm gathering.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think even as far as like sharing finances, I don't know if you see that a lot too. Like some couples are not comfortable sharing bank accounts and they have separate money and some are very comfortable with that. And I think talking about like how your parents did it or, what your experiences were growing up with even other family members where you notice this happening can help your partner understand if you guys had like different experiences and help you figure out how you want to do it in your relationship because we don't have to do it the same way that our
Mhm.
parents did it. We just want to do it in a way that we're both comfortable and feel secure.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. So we talked a little bit about the Gottman method and this idea of like financial harmony within the relationship. So, given your expertise in the Gottman method for couples, what insights can you offer about maintaining financial harmony in relationships?
Yeah. So, something I talk about a lot, especially when we're working towards the close of therapy, is consistency and relapse prevention. And relapse is like the conflict, right? We're going to relapse back into conflict, the reason that
Mm,
brought you to therapy. So, in order to work on that, we have to have an hour at least set aside every week in your relationship to talk about big things. So if one of your goals was to be able to talk about conflict, it's not done when you've found that initial compromise. We have to keep talking about that for the rest of our lives. So set aside that time, that uninterrupted time every week where you can talk about things like this. Also, throw in a date night too, like have some fun. It's not all business, and making sure that you're using the skills that you learn, much like after they see a financial planner like yourself. Like I'm sure that you have goals that you've established with them that they're not just going to do one time. It's something you have to check that budget every month, make sure that you're staying within the amounts you aimed for, until you reach those goals. And then what are you going to do when you reach that goal? Like, what's the next step? It's ongoing.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, and that's the biggest thing. We call it a state of the union meeting in Gottman Method, where you're kind of checking on all aspects of the relationship. I like to call it a weekly relationship meeting too. And I say, when you quit therapy, I still want you to have therapy every week. I'm just not going to be there. You're just going to use all the
Yeah.
skills you already learned.
Oh, I really, really like that state of the union. It's so true. Yes. I do something really similar, but I only focus on the financial piece, of course. And one of them is, okay, it's an intentional 15, 20-minute conversation where I give them kind of a little bit of a script where I say, okay, you know, this week, and it's all in like the I statements, like I'm
Yeah.
feeling financial insecurity around this. What would be helpful for me would be this, and then, you let the other, uh you let the spouse kind of respond with what they think they're able to bring to the relationship in response, and I give my clients the script, and I tell them out front, like, upfront, I'm like, "It's kinda cheesy, but it works." Like, and
Yes.
and I also will echo your advice to do it on a weekly basis, like, don't let it build, right? I th
Yes. Yes.
I think of it like a pressure release valve, like, you gotta release a little bit of the pressure as you go so that you don't build up these huge resentments, right?
Yeah, and I love that script. I statements are great. I mean, you'll hear a lot of different therapies talk about it. But in Gottman Method, we have the gentle startup or soften startup, and it's exactly what you're saying. Is I feel this, and this is what I need in order to not feel that way anymore. So, like, I'm feeling financial insecurity this week, and this is what would be helpful. Perfect. Like, who's going to respond poorly to that? That's a great way to present your feelings to your partner and giving them a solution that they can
Yeah.
help you with too.
Yeah. I like too that you start with like how you feel. No one can tell you that your feeling is wrong, right? That's like
Yes.
personal to you. So you're already starting with like truth. Like, I feel really weird when we talk about X, Y, and Z in our financial life because it's whatever. I feel uncertain. And,
Yeah.
it
And
just
you're taking
opens up.
responsibility for your feelings instead of saying, "You're making me feel this way. I'm feeling this way. This is
Right.
my thing that I'm experiencing."
Yes, exactly. I mean, I'm not perfect at it by any stretch, but it's definitely been like a really good way to approach the relationship that I'm in right now. And hopefully we'll be in for a long time. But yeah, yeah, I might even share this. So we're in a relationship, it's 8 months in, and we've gone to like a couples counselor basically once a month for the last like 4 months. And it's kind of like preemptive. Like, we want to learn how to become better communicators with each other so that we avoid these like huge resentments. Um, we're actually both coming to the relationship after divorces, right? So we don't want to repeat our mistakes.
Yeah.
So being really intentional about it this time around.
I love that. That's great. And I'm not perfect at it either. I've been married 13 years too, but being a couples counselor doesn't give you the advantage people think. You still have to put in just as much work and you still have to see a therapist too.
I like what you said earlier, that sometimes it might be this like trifecta of like, you got to have your individual coach, you both need to go see a counselor together, and then see a financial planner or financial coach as a couple to really make headway. And I am fully on board with that. Um, you, this is difficult stuff sometimes to work through, and it's okay to get help for it.
Yes, absolutely. I'm always saying use any resource available to you. You don't have to do anything alone. And regarding finances, nothing's getting cheaper. Nothing's ever getting cheaper. Things are only getting more expensive. Like we need the help on this for sure.
Yes. Um, okay, so from your professional perspective, how crucial is financial wellness to overall mental health?
Oh, it's super important. When you look at like the theory of wellness, they usually have 8 areas and finances is one of those. I mean, it's big. It's just as important as your physical well-being, your physical wellness, your emotional wellness, your social wellness. Like those are just like our basic needs for wellness that if one area is totally lacking, you're not going to be okay in other areas because if you're not doing well financially, you're not going to have social wellness and maybe not even physical wellness because you're not going to have the funds to take care of yourself and go out and do these things.
Yeah.
So it all intertwines together. It's all very important. And I think, like I mentioned in the beginning, finances does impact your mental health. When you're that stressed or you don't have what you need or you're just super anxious about it, it affects your whole day because we're constantly spending money in some way. I mean, we have
Mhm. Mhm.
money that's just coming out of our accounts, things we have to buy, have to pay for transportation, pay to eat your meals. Like you just really don't get a break from thinking about it.
No, you don't. And I'm telling clients all the time, like, money touches almost every aspect of your life.
Mhm.
And because of that, like, you're allowed to bring your issues around that into this conversation with me today. And that is okay because it's important. Like, I love that I don't know about the 8 different wellness things. So I got to look into that. But yes, I have always been saying that, like, if one is out of whack, it's not in balance. It just affects, yeah, there's like a, nothing is happening in isolation, right? It all,
Yes.
yeah. Okay. So we're nearing the end of our little chat here, and I've had so much fun. But uh, do you have like any practical advice for viewers who might be struggling to balance their financial wellness and their mental health?
Yeah, good question. So I would always start with doing a little like journaling if writing is your thing, doing a little self-reflection about your finances. What are your goals? What are your expectations? Like how do you like to spend or save money? Like, and I always kind of use the spender or saver because I think most people can kind of like lean one way
Hmm.
or the other. And then have a conversation with your partner about it and maybe even encourage them to do the journaling too. And then you guys can kind of just share about like where you're each coming from as a starting point. And I think that's a gentler way to have an initial
Oh, yeah.
conversation. And you might even find that your goals really are the same. You just have like different reasonings and approaches for that. And then self-care, always self-care for your relationships, self-care for yourself, just making sure that you take time for yourself. In such a stressful, busy world that we live in, like you deserve to be taken care of in whatever way that works for you. Therapy, of course, is a great tool for that. Seeing a financial coach, I think, also counts for that too. It's taking the stress off yourself to get some things done. And I can't give suggestions for other ways of self-care because everyone does it differently. I just know that you need to make sure you prioritize some time every day for yourself and every week at minimum with your partner for a big chunk of time.
Hmm. I really love the advice. I love all the advice, but you started with talking about um, having kind of like a quiet moment with yourself and asking yourself, like, what is it that I do want? Like, what do I personally want to feel fulfilled? And then bringing that to the to the group session and sharing in that way and having your partner do the same. My version of that is called like the shared vision. What are you as a couple both trying to achieve? And sometimes like we'll go as far as like a mission statement for like a family. Like what
I
is
love
it?
that.
Yeah, right? Like what is your why are we all here? What are you trying to achieve? And you're right, it's a better start into uh, what could be hot button issues or triggering conversations.
Starting on a positive note is always good. I think we know a lot easier like what we don't like and what we don't want, but it's good to start with what you do want, and that kind of sets the tone for the conversation too.
Yeah. Carrie, if people want to hear more about you and your insights or read more about what you do, where can they go?
Yeah, good question. So they can follow me on the Gottman blog and sign up on those emails like you did too. I love getting them in your inbox because you don't have to remember to go look at it. I also write for Psychology Today regularly, so you can follow my blogs on there. But check out my website. It's karirusnakcounseling.com, and that has all my contacts for social media and like everything I'm doing as far as writing. And then if you are located in one of the states I'm licensed in, you can reach out to me and see if I have any availability for counseling too.
That's awesome. Carrie, it has been a really great time having you here. You're natural on camera, so you should do
Oh,
more of
thank
this
you.
YouTube stuff.
Yeah, I might. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for reaching out to me.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for being game to do it. And I think, I think we shared some really good insights with the folks viewing that, it might translate into some really positive steps for them. So thank you for your time. And with that, I will sign off. Thank you for being here. If you liked anything you heard today, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want more content like this direct to your inbox, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But for now, I wish you wellness in all things today and every day. I'll see you later.